I am back. I am back with Table Talk with you know who. And we have some wonderful topics for you today, and I have a wonderful group of co-hosts. They'll introduce themselves.
Daryl Buchanan.
AJ Williams.
And Jerome Buffington.
Okay, we're going to start again, guys. I'm Brenda Perryman. I'm a host of a TV show, former teacher. Who are you?
I'm Daryl Buchanan, a community activist.
Okay.
AJ Williams, editor of Michigan Chronicle, City Lifestyle, and Single Black Chick.
Jerome Buffington, business development manager for Michigan.
Visiting Nurses Association.
Yes, for Visiting Nurses Association, Michigan Community Visiting Nurses Association.
Okay. All right. A lot to talk about. This week was the 50th anniversary of the death of Martin Luther King. I found myself closer to him even now. What did you think about?
Well, having been alive and actually have seen Dr. King, and just know that, he was the momentum for so many changes that took place in my life. I agree with you. I feel closer to him now because as you go back now and read, many of his speeches, he was spot on. It's almost like he's speaking from the grave to us
today.
I would agree. So for me, it's such a legacy, and for Dr. King, so I'm very appreciative of the benefits that we have now, or the growth that we have, but it also saddened me because of what you just said. It's like we are 2 steps ahead and then 2 steps back. It's like playing a cha-cha. The things that he talks about is so relevant, and that kind of saddens me because I feel like we should be further ahead than where we are for all the things that he has sacrificed and the civil rights movement has sacrificed. It seems that we're right back almost where we started.
And not just us. America.
In general.
Okay, right. America has, but let's talk about us.
I would
right
beg to
now.
say we might be further behind.
In many respects.
At least in that time, you had identified leaders who were out in the forefront that were, trying to take us places. Right now, we're kind of in disarray, and everybody seems to be in limbo. I found myself kind of reflecting on, some of the things that I was taught when I was at Morehouse. Dr. King was also a graduate of Morehouse, and, they...
At 19.
Yes.
Did you graduate at 19?
No, I did not. I was on an extended plan, but we're not going to talk about that. But I found myself reflecting on, if he was here today, what would he say about, us as a people, where we are, what we're doing, as well as, when you look at America, not too much has changed. And I think even with the Trump era, some things seems to be resurfacing, back from the 1960s.
Well, I think that he has encouraged an overt racism. See, in the North, racism was kind of covert.
Absolutely.
And it was more overt in the South. Now, there was one little speech. I didn't put it up on YouTube. Not on YouTube, on my Facebook page. But it was about. He was just talking. He was saying that the slaves were freed, so-called freed by Abraham Lincoln, but they weren't. They were freed to starve, free to not have any money, free to not, just be out there, where immigrants came in and immigrants were given certain things that black people were not. He also said about the statement, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And they were telling it to people who didn't even have boots. And it was that explanation, it was just a minute or so long, was so important. And I was a teenager during those times. I was actually in college, and he was on the Tonight Show. Isn't that something?
Mm-hmm.
Martin Luther King was on the Tonight Show, but that particular night, Harry Belafonte hosted. And Martin Luther King was talking, and he was talking a little more militant. And I was kind of militant anyway. And I said, well, listen to him. He's really going. And 2 weeks later or so, he was dead. Yeah. And the attitude, I see the same attitude now that I saw back then when somebody came to my classroom door. They knocked on the door. I was the only black person in the class. I said, I'm going to take an evening class, speech class, so that way I could sleep longer in the day. You know, real superficial. Anyway, I was there, and they knocked on the door, and they said, can we see Brenda? And I came out. I said, what's up? They said, Martin Luther King was just assassinated. He's dead. I said, no. He said, we're gathering. Everybody was gathering around so we could march or whatever we were going to do. And this white young man in my class, after I told the class, he said, well, that's just like somebody getting hit by a car to me. I don't care. You know, and I started to lunge at him. And the teacher said, Brenda, you could leave. I said, okay. But we gathered around, and I remember they stopped selling gas in Detroit the next day because they
the
thought
riots.
people were
Yeah.
going to riot. And we had just been through the riot less than a year before. But he just was very brilliant.
Absolutely. And the brilliance of Martin Luther King was that he was able to hold a mirror up to America and say, this is what you say you stand for, okay? But this is what you look like. So in spite of the fact that, you know, we go around the world fighting for freedom for everybody else, but we don't have the freedoms for all the citizens here in America. And he was an absolute genius when it came to
Yeah,
that.
but you know, people had kind of turned against him. You know, once Stokely Carmichael started talking about black power, we got to be more vigilant. And H. Rap Brown was another person who came out, and there was a movie theater on Dexter. It was called the Dexter Theater. And on top
Like
of the
Lin
theater, H. Rap Brown was on top of the theater. He was talking, and he had crowds gathered around him and everything. But that I Have a Dream speech is such a great speech.
They don't really talk too much about him in his last days. Like you were saying, he has turned quite militant and was talking about economic equality as opposed to racial
And
equality.
anti-war.
And that's why he was killed. Because if you remember, at the same time he went to Memphis, you know, to march with the sanitation workers, he was also putting the Poor People's
March, right.
in Washington, D.C. The problem was he had finally his message started to resonate with poor whites. And what we don't understand is that racism is a tool that keeps poor people divided.
Yes.
And as long as we stay divided and keep blaming each other for our condition, that
You can be
1%,
monetized off of that.
that 1%, they'll continue to monetize that.
Yeah.
Trump
So-
ran his campaign off of it.
Yeah.
So
Right.
once you start talking about changing the status quo, then you become dangerous. You can march, you can face down every racist in America. They don't care about that. That's not what the
Thank
issue
you,
is.
thank you. See, when we were marching back in the day, marching was kind of new. But now I don't think, well, now I thought the Young People's March was good because it was young people. But I just don't think it has the impact
I
anymore.
think what Daron said is very true. Back you had very, whether opposing ideas and closer to the end of their days, very aligning ideas with Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. You had these key figures that had to be, because at the head, if you cut off the head, the rest of the body is going to fall. So with us today, we don't have these very strong leaders that are willing to sacrifice themselves
Absolutely.
to the extent of, you know, I'll die for this. I'm not saying that's where you have to be, but that's where your passion has to be. We don't have those leaders. We have marches, we have groups, but there isn't anyone that's really the head of a cause.
Absolutely. Well, there's some young people who are the head of particular causes. I was seeing them, the Me Too person, and then there was the guy, Black Lives Matter.
I think you have, not to say personalities, I mean, you have
But
very,
they're
like
not
Angela,
the leaders that
they're
we
not
had.
the same.
And then even when you look at that with the media and the way that it's used now as opposed to in the past, you know, certain things can be misconstrued. So when you have up and coming leaders and things of that sort, you see a smear campaign that comes right after it in the public eye, on the news. They're finding all kind of details, or they're making up all kind of details. The one good thing that you do have is social media, where you can kind of combat that, and people can put out their own image, own self-image. And
But
things of
even
that
the
sort.
social media is dangerous because you're seeing the attacks on the young man from Parkland, you
Yeah.
know, and I mean, just some of the things that have been said about him are just absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, I don't even look. I pay more attention to the comments than I do the articles, because you read the article, but when you look down at the comments,
You see
see
you see the vehemence.
Yes,
Oh,
you
see
see where
the vi-
society
yeah, I
is
mean,
at.
But you know, so poignant to me that night before he died was that speech, because he wasn't even going to go over to that church. He said, I'm not going to go.
Yeah,
But
they
they
had it,
made
yeah.
him go. They made him go. They encouraged him to go. And he said if he was going to be there, he's just going to say, hey. But he got up there and he started talking. But that part where he says, I may not get there with you. And I mean, that puts a lot. Did he know?
Well, he had been receiving death threats and things of that sort,
Right.
and things have become very volatile for him. So I'm sure he had some inkling that there's a possibility that I might not be protected, and
There's a couple things. I think he knew. I really do believe he knew, because, again, when you start talking about the money, that's when you put your life in jeopardy.
Right. Well, I wanted to say that we do have a call. Wanted to say this real quick. Remember when the Israelites were led out by Moses and everything? It took them so many years to get to the promised land. And I think we're on a journey similar. I mean, it's going to take beyond my lifetime probably, because we thought, well, here we go. And then some people erroneously thought when Barack Obama was elected
That was it.
we is free now. But not so. We have Jihad on the line. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Queen, and good morning to your guests.
good
Good
morning.
morning.
Good morning.
You know, Queen, Martin understand, from 1963 to 1968, he had made a complete change of his thought
Yes, he
and his program. And, a lot of us don't want to, deal with that reality, because many of those that walked with Martin in 63 and in 68, they refused to walk with Martin. Many of the pastors refused to even let Martin even speak in their churches and whatnot,
Right.
because Martin, came to the realization that the Republican Party nor the Democratic Party was really helpful towards what he was about. And so he spoke on that. Even he made the statement to Harold Belafonte when he was sitting there right before he was assassinated. He was asking why he was so quiet, and he was saying that he had felt that he was leading his people into a burning house, and that he felt bad about that, because he had come to the realization, that really America was trying to use Martin in a way of staying away from the Vietnam War, real issues and whatnot. Long as he was talking about integrating restaurants and hotels, that was all right with white America. And when he went to talking about economics and the war, how can you want us to be nonviolent here in America, but send us over there to kill your enemies, your so-called enemies? He became a threat. That's why even people don't know that even the Kennedys were spying on Martin. J. Edgar Hoover called him the most notorious Negro, or what, the most dangerous. And then people won't mention the fact that he was sitting with Elijah Muhammad 3 months prior to his assassinating. And him and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad were friends, and he was coming around. And Martin, just like what you spoke on, Martin said, I've been to the mountaintop. Well, when you talk about mountain is talking about power. And he said, and I looked over and I saw the promised land.
Right.
And I may not make it with you.
Right.
He had came into the understanding that there was an assassination on his life, and the possibility he wouldn't be around. But he said, but I see you going into the promised land. He had came into the understanding that the promised land is America, and that he was really speaking in terms of that which many of us have been made to believe that it was something 400 years ago. He was really referring to black people today, who are the true children of Israel, that you're going to go to the promised land, and the promised land is America. Whether you like it or not, America's being brought down right before our eyes in degrees as we sit here, she's being brought down by the forces of nature, by the economy and everything. But we don't see it because we're so caught up in the world of America that we are blinded or whatever.
Well, I
but
think-
Martin saw, because Martin is a man of God.
Jihad, I think we too, and I thank you so much for your comments.
Yes, you all have a blessed day. Love you all.
I think we're too caught up in what America is supposed to be, and that we don't. We see things happening now, and like you said, it's like we're reverting back, reverting back.
Because we're not paying attention to our history. And if you don't pay attention to your history, you are doomed to repeat it. And we're starting to go back into this, recidivism in terms of, where we had started to go as a nation. But then it was affecting some people's bottom dollar.
Yeah.
Okay. And
yeah.
so, that's really, when the racism comes to its penultimate.
But I think a community that's not together itself, we were a little more united as black people back then.
Yeah.
I really believe
much
that.
so.
And
Because we had to be.
yeah, we had to be. But here's the thing. People can't fight you as well if you're united.
No, but go
One
ahead.
of the worst things, and I'll say this, and I know it's going to make some people upset, but integration was
I was just
probably
about to say that.
one of the worst things that happened. We did better when we had to rely upon one another.
And
because
support
it
each other.
And
because it
support each
goes
other.
into the economics. When
Absolutely.
you talk about group economics, you had to go to your black doctor. You had to go to a black dentist. Thereby, the dollar staying within the black community way longer. Right now, it's maybe a month that the black dollar circulates before
If
it
that.
goes out. It's
You know-
that. It might be lower. But there is unity in numbers, and you get the numbers by having unity in funds. Because a lot of the things that you're trying, that's where you get to be heard. But we don't have that because we're so, and it's a passion point for me because I see a lot of people. I had a very close friend of mine go on Facebook and down a black business because they weren't open on time. And I told him, I was like, and it was during a Black Lives Week Matter issue, week where it was just, we needed to be solidarity. And I was like, where is what happened to my brother's keeper? I said, I'm not saying that you can't address this, but address it online. I mean, address it to the business. Some things are family business. I went to the block and I had a mispriced experience. I wanted to get a drink, and it was supposed
The
to be
block
one
is a
thing.
restaurant. In case people don't know, the block is
The
a
block is
restaurant.
a
Black-owned
black-owned
restaurant
restaurant.
in
I
Midtown.
go there often, and there was a pricing difference with what I wanted. And when my bill came, it was more. And so the manager comes, and he said, "Oh, we changed our price." I said, "Well, on your board it says it's this." And I was like, "This is not the correct price." And he was like, "Well, I apologize. I'll change it for you." I said, "No, don't change it. The money isn't the issue. I'm here to support." I was like, "I'll pay the money, but I want you to do better at customer service." 2 weeks later, I came in. He had changed the board. And I went and I told him, I said, "Thank you." I was like, because I'm not about to get all, you need to, I want my money off.
The
No,
neck row with the neck row.
Yep, all of that. All of that. Because it's about
Chicken
you.
neck.
Right. It's about unity. It's about, I want you to do better as a business, thereby making me more wanting to come as a customer, thereby making funds, making jobs. This is how we grow. But we don't do that. We're so individualized in our own experiences.
And not just that, the economics are really at the heart of all of it. Because when I grew up,
everything.
When I grew up, my uncle was a pharmacist. There used to be a group of black pharmacists here in
there
Detroit.
were. Yes,
And these gentlemen would get together and they would have their ball, their little fundraiser and everything. They sent black students, to college. They had scholarships where they sent black students to college. You don't even see black pharmacies, let alone, there are very few pharmacies in our community, and black pharmacists, most of the time there are other people in the pharmacies when you go there. You don't see us anymore.
Because
So
when we were integrated, we were supposed to be like, okay, great, we have these options, but I'm still going to the black doctor. We took it out, and it is
Right.
the come up is not being able to support a black business now.
Right.
I have the funds to go and do something else.
So that those businesses can sustain themselves. Because I can remember back WGPR, you always had the commercials. You had it for
Singleton Cleaners.
Singleton Cleaners. You had
Henry
Black Cleaners.
Tyler.
You had I'm trying to think of the one that it was a
Roaches.
it was a farm it was pharmacy.
Davis,
They
Howard Davis.
yes.
Oh, really?
And
Davis cut rate.
Yeah.
Oh,
Remember?
cut
Yeah.
rate, right.
you had
right.
the Brady Keys Burger King.
Right, absolutely.
I do remember that.
I mean, you had all
Okay,
those things.
so now we've talked about this. So, what does it leave to for us for? What can we do to help our people move it along, or
I
to
think-
help change some kind of legislation?
Legislation is very big, but I think on a smaller scale, I think we need to get out, get our young people registered to vote, make them understand why their vote counts. We don't have civics in school anymore.
No.
So kids don't understand how their vote matters, and they don't see it as mattering. So a lot of them don't vote. Unfortunately. So I think you have to do something on a small scale where you actually teach children or teach young folks the importance of it, or why this is how you are affected by this. Because most folks, they'll participate when they know it has a distinct effect on them in their lives.
And just to tag on to that, what we're going through today are the consequences of not voting.
Right.
Okay,
Absolutely.
AJ, then Daryl.
I totally agree. I think it's a lot of different small things that we do that add up to a very big change. For me, it's all about economics. I'm very big on supporting my community, where I live, black businesses, and actually expressing that. Me and my friend, we do this thing, and it's a small, but small things make. It's the small foxes that can either destroy or create the vine, in my perspective. So every Friday, we do Black Friday. We support everything we do that day as black businesses.
That's a
It's
great idea.
everything we do. Like from where my lunch is at, if I go to the store, I literally go out my way to find whatever I need on every Friday, and we call it Black Friday. It's our Black Friday.
Oh, that's
So
great.
that's what we do.
That's great. Daryl,
You know,
because we got to move
Yeah,
on
because
to the
you know
next.
so I'm going to bring it back to Martin Luther King,
Right.
and
Take that up.
he was right on the verge of creating a revolution. Within 2 voting cycles, if he had gotten poor people, black and white, to vote in their own interest and not be led astray by a party line, we would have had a different country right now. And I think a lot of things would be different right now. So, the power is, with the voting. And, it's sad that, we've been in a situation now where young people don't feel like voting matters. And that's sad
But
because,
I think there's going to be some contagion because
now,
of
yeah.
what now. Well, heck,
yeah,
the past is the past.
yeah, now because we're seeing the repercussions of not voting and the situation that we've been placed in now.
But I think social media plays a big part in that. If you look at everything that's going on now, say with the shooting in Florida at the school and how those kids have kind of come together and they use
It's an
social
awakening.
media, you see a lot of these companies backing down because they realize the economics that's involved in this when they put those messages out on social
A
media.
lot of
And-
young
and-
people
yeah.
spend money.
And all these people that are, spouting all this hate and party line and everything, they're going to be dead. And these young people are the ones that are going to be
Well,
replacing them.
We got
Unfortunately, we can't get our
okay.
politicians
Let's
to-
tie a bow on it. We have to go to the next. We have so many topics. Everybody.
Passionate topics.
What we're going to do though is this next topic. We'll just talk about it for a minute because I think Trump is having a nervous breakdown, and he wants to mobilize. In fact, he has mobilized the National Guard to secure the border. See, that's the way he gets unity from and allegiance from his base is to scare everybody to death
If
with
you-
lies.
Well, if you look at it, all of these presidencies, when they start failing, what's the first thing they do? We go to war. Okay, so 9/11 saved Bush. Okay, think about that. And nobody is going to change leadership in the middle of a war. And so Trump is now bringing up his.
Right.
So for
AJ.
me, I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist. So I do believe that, from like the magician theory, like look over here. So while I'm doing, XYZ over here. However, Bush and Barack Obama both have executed in 2010. Barack Obama sent 1,200 troops. the National Guard to protect the border. I'm not opposed to protect me personally. I'm not opposed to protecting the border. I'm not opposed. I think that's a part of the National Guard. I think that's part of national security. I think that is something that we should do. However, the problem with Trump is he'll use this versus it's actually being a homeland security issue. He'll use it as a platform, like you said, to rally up his base and
to deflect from the other-
and try to, oh, we're going to build this wall and now we're back in. So it's kind of like, okay, where did the caravan come from? Who actually started it? It starts making to ask all these other questions.
And I think it even goes deeper when you look. We border with various countries. They're not trying to build a wall for Canada. We're trying to build a wall for Mexico. Why? I really don't understand.
Well,
it's not
and
like they're a threat.
people coming into the country, it's much lower. Remember, they called Barack Obama deporter in chief, because he deported quite a few people. And Trump is just so obsessed with Barack Obama.
Well, I think that comes back to white America's fear.
Yes.
Their fear of losing the majority.
Fear of a black
And that's
planet.
what he feeds into. That's how, like you said earlier, that's how he won. It's whether he believes it
That's
or
one
he
of the
thinks
ways
it.
he won.
One of the ways, whether he believes it or not. The thing that you want to, when you talk about white America, middle class to, poor white America, it's such an interesting perspective to me because Trump is like the anti of like rural white America. Like, you're not him. He doesn't think you're equal. Yet in their mind, they attach to it because it's these archaic, perspectives of we don't want to be the minority anymore.
creates a village
He's
for them.
right. He's going to stop the immigrants, even though he needs it. We need this in our society. They just see like, okay, he's going to stop this. He's going to stop them from coming. They're the bad people. Like you said, he's created a villain. That's a perfect example. So they buy into that. So he goes to whatever he can do to like buy them into that. You hate Barack Obama? Bet. I'm gonna run with that. You hate immigrants? Bet. I'm gonna build a wall. Like that's his mentality.
It's a year later.
Ain't no
And
wall.
it's still Barack Obama's fault.
And
it's
he's
still Hillary's
Hillary.
It's
But
always somebody else's fault. And he takes no ownership of the decisions that he makes and the consequences for his decisions. And I have a big problem with that. That's not a leader.
Well, I have
It's
a
not a
problem
leader.
with the fact that he lies incessantly and gets away with it. I mean, everybody, a bald-faced lie.
Yeah.
Like if you told me today was Monday, I said, Daron, today ain't Monday. He could tell him today is Monday, and nobody, Congress is quiet.
And they will say, "Oh, it's Monday."
I'm in shock. I'm still in shock over the fact that we have a president that's being accused of messing with a porn star, and
3 of them
it's like
You said
nothing. It's
And he's
nothing.
still in office.
that we know of.
It's
Still in
nothing.
office.
I mean, when
No
you
more
look at candidates
moral
that have been
character.
that have dropped out of races because of infidelity or what have you, past transgressions, you can't get any lower than messing with a porn star. I mean,
Wait.
Well, no,
Cheated on
there's
wife
some
number
ways to
1
get
with wife
lower.
number 2. Cheated on wife number 2 with wife number 3. Got kids from all of them.
oh,
my, come on.
I mean, he
man.
I think, one of the things that I think that makes, outside of he's a very deep narcissistic, like borderline, if not actual psychopath,
Right.
is the perspective that Trump didn't think he was going to win himself.
Yeah, that's
So
very true.
when you are a person that gets up
Putin knew.
and starts use a platform and say whatever you want, do whatever you want because you don't think that you're going to win and you win. Do you understand the perspective that
He
you
thought he
have?
was gonna sell
it's like,
books.
well then, bet I can get up here and say whatever I want to say as the president. I can do whatever I want because y'all still going to take it because y'all voted me in. So it's no reason I don't have to lie or mess with porn stars or do XYZ. Y'all not going to, it's Congress, it's the other people behind it that's the fault.
And it seems like he says, I am king. I mean, like
I'm the
it's
best at everything.
No,
Everything.
a monarchy.
Right.
I equate it to kind of like a battered spouse syndrome. I can do whatever I want to do, and you're not going to leave me.
You're not going to leave
You're
me.
not going to leave me.
And they won't.
Metaphorically, you're
Because
right.
we have it.
Yeah,
You're right.
And we keep proving it
And
every
right now,
day.
we're
Let's-
abused.
We're like that.
I gotta keep it moving. We got, oh yeah, we got so much to talk about. We can talk about each subject for the whole show, you
Right,
know.
absolutely.
But Bill Cosby is about to go back on trial again. Thoughts?
You know, after a certain point, you look at somebody and it's like, what's the point? Because Bill Cosby is, I mean, I am not trying to make any kind of acceptance of what he's accused of. I mean, but Bill Cosby is an extreme. He's a very old man. I mean, what are you
He
going
ain't that old.
Oh,
Or maybe I'm looking at myself.
yeah. He can't see. He can't walk. I mean, you know,
But-
you're gonna put him in jail, and then we got to take care of that. You know, at a certain point. Is it about, you know, corrections, or is it about revenge? Okay.
Okay, Jasmine wrote here something here that I thought was so profound. She says, Bill Cosby was seen as a father figure in the black community, crafting shows which highlighted black Americans in the upper class light while straying away from the typical ghetto story. Despite the place he has had in many peoples of color's heart and minds in recent years, Cosby has been the source of allegations of sexual assault. Currently, another trial is underway. And do you think that the jurors, you think he could get a fair trial?
No. No, I'll be honest. I don't think he can. Not with the publicity that's been given out there, and they in articles that we read, they did talk about the Me Too and things of that sort. Again, I'm not condoning what he did. I don't know whether he's guilty or whether he's innocent. That's not for me to decide. But there was a mistrial the first time. How many times are we going to do this? And what do we gain by it? I guess that's why I look at it like, okay, you've humiliated him personally. His show is not on the air anymore. No one looks at him the same as they used to. You've destroyed his credibility as an entertainer, as a father figure, or what have you. What else do you want? I mean, putting him in jail, what does that solve?
Right.
Putting a
There's
man
no
in
point.
jail that, might not be around too long, or
What if he committed the crime?
For me, I feel I kind of feel it's a mixed emotion. As a woman, as I take any type of, domestic abuse or sexual assault, very personally and very seriously. I do feel that people have that's what the justice system is supposed to be. You have your right to, to justice, to a due process. I'm not opposed to the trial. However, I also, once again, I go back to the conspiracy theory of kind of what you said. Like, at this point, what is the motive? What's the motive? What's the motivation outside of, if you look from a victim's perspective, is I still want to get my justice. Regardless of him being, demonized or whatever, as a victim, you still want to be like, I want to have my process. Now, we go through a mistrial again. I mean, we're going to have to just let's just wrap it up. Like,
Daryl?
Well, at the time that all these charges were coming out, I don't know if you recall, he was trying to purchase NBC. So all of a sudden, all these allegations come up.
economics.
His whole persona is destroyed. His brand is gone. Okay. Now I'm just going.
it's a
I'm
mixed
going with
feeling.
you.
No, I
I'm going
feel
with you
you.
on the conspiracies.
Yeah.
Okay, because how do you wait 30-some years to bring out something that happened to you? If it happened, and especially a white woman saying that a black man did this, if you had said it then, he would have gotten lynched a long time ago. Okay,
I do.
that's the first thing. But I used to be a probation officer, and this happened down the street from me. I had a neighbor who had a son who had been in prison. This guy was a mail carrier, and the son had been in prison. When he got out, The dad didn't want to have anything to do with them. The boy broke into the house and, was terrorizing the family. He fell asleep down in the basement. The father went downstairs and killed his son. Now, he killed him. Okay, he killed his son. Killed him with a crowbar. Okay. When it went to trial, and I was following this trial, the judge did not imprison him because he said, you have already been sentenced. You have to live with the fact that you killed your son for the rest of your life. Okay? Bill Cosby has to live with the fact that, he was at the point of making a significant change, in the communications arena and failed. Now, was it because, if he did it, he's got to live with that now. His sentence is already
There's
been
a
imposed.
saying, today's news can be tomorrow's toilet paper. And, he was top of the charts. But, deeds, and I agree with AJ, if it were me, because as women, many of us have had powerful men hit on us, try to entice us, and you have to be strong, and you have to, some women just relent and say, well, I want to save my job, or I want to get this far somewhere. But I didn't understand, and I think he has to get his due, but I didn't understand people saying, what you laughing at? No,
I'm
but
not in on this. I don't know.
no, I'm not in on it either. But he has to get something if this happened. I just don't understand. There are women, like you said, who did take 30 years, but women were more fearful to bring that out back in
But
those.
Sure.
reading some of those, a lot of those women, I can't roll with, just for the simple fact of, okay, you had some that said this was over years.
Yeah, no.
So-
This was over years. So you telling me that you think this man did something to you, and then you go back to him, or you allow him to come around again, or you allow this to, I don't.
I understand your
He pays your
perspective.
rent.
I understand your perspective.
That's sugar daddy. That's not-
And once again, we make decisions based upon the current scheme or situation in our life. It doesn't mean that we didn't feel taken advantage of in that perspective. I'm going to say this, though. When it comes to R. Kelly, just here recently, and this is the correlation, I had a friend of mine ask me to go to the concert. I said, I can't go to the R. Kelly concert. I can't publicly support him. I'm going to get dragged as much as Black girl power I'm about. And so we had a debate, and he's like, well, he's never been convicted of anything and XYZ. And I said, I agree with you. I do. I said, however, when we let certain things go at a point where there's smoke, there's fire. So with Bill Cosby, I'm not saying he did this with this woman or not. However, where there's smoke, I'm not saying all of them. I'm not saying 10 of them. But where there's smoke, there's fire. And at a point, sometimes even though you may not, when you made these decisions, you didn't think you were in a position of power. You didn't think that you were going to make the decision to try to, further and take over a media conglomerate. You didn't think about those decisions at the time, that lest your deeds find you out. So he's hit a point that when you do things to put yourself in a position that when you want to do something, they didn't mess with you then because you weren't messing with the money, if your conspiracy theory is true. But now you can't hang somebody, you can't taint somebody to this extent unless there's something that may have done. Now, this might have been swept under the rug back then because it wasn't a big deal, and women's rights or how we were perceived at that point may not have been something that's top of mind. But now when you go to make a big money move, your deeds are starting to find you out. Are all your deeds true? I'm not going to say that. But where there's smoke, there's fire.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Well, we're gonna be watching that, aren't we?
Yes.
We're gonna
I'm
watch.
scared for him.
You're scared for it.
Because
I'm nervous.
with this trial, they're not bringing in folks from other cities, because of everything that's been so
Yeah,
prevalent
it's
in the
that
city.
woman, that one woman.
And
I'm fearful.
It won't be a jury of his peers.
No,
So
I'm fearful
it's gonna be
for
a
his
little
aide,
different.
the young man that's with him all the time. So does it mean you got to go too? 'Cause
We're gonna take care of him.
Come on, come on. It's scary, but you know, if they sentence him, what do you do? This is going to be very, very daunting. Well, just a real quick one, since we were kind of talking about this at the beginning. A nurse was fired for saying Stephon Clark, the young man who was shot in the back
Multiple times.
Unarmed.
deserved to be killed. She had already raised $20,000 for her defense. They fired her, and I mean, really. I mean, that's the attitude, though. A lot of people say, "Yeah, well, he must have done something." He had a cell phone.
he had a cell phone and 8 shots in his back. Okay,
Eight shots.
8 shots
Right.
in the back. So I mean, how
not
were
e-
you ever a danger to anybody when your back is turned with a cell phone in your hand? He deserved to die. You deserve to be fired.
I'm gonna
Okay,
say
especially from the healthcare
Yes.
field.
exactly. I don't want you, Nurse Death. I don't
No,
want you
no.
over here trying to
Nurse Death.
Nurse Death. That's my freedom of speech.
Mm-hmm.
Nurse Death. Over here from a perspective of, because let me tell you, the reason that you think, you got to look at underlining. I'm big on looking at underlining intentions
Absolutely.
of people. You feel like he deserved to die because he was black. That's why you got fired. That's literally why you got fired, because you have because if you look at the facts as a reasonable person that I think most average people are, you can understand the fact that 8 times is excessive. He was shot in the back. He was in his grandmother's backyard. Like, so if you look at it, even if
Didn't
you
have
are,
a weapon.
he didn't have a weapon, you would not say a person deserved to die outside of the fact that you felt that he needed to deserve to die because he was black, because he was a black boy. That's why you got fired. And sadly, this is kind of what he said about the comments and articles. What's so sad, and it gets me so heated, is the fact that we have things in the way society is right now. What they're funding, every person that funded that felt that he deserved to die as a black boy.
Absolutely. And last night when I saw the play,
And that she didn't deserve to be
I-
punished.
Right.
There's a play at the Rep right now, Harmony Park. There's a line in it where the white character says, "Well, you know how they are." And how many times have you heard something like that? You know how they are. So in other words, Eric Garner deserved to die. You know, I feel for each man I know, because it's like they're walking around with a target on their back.
It's tough being the boogeyman. I'm telling you.
I mean, seriously.
And to further go into what that says is that our lives don't matter as
matter.
much as theirs. Our lives are not valued as much as theirs, which is why we don't see a lot of these officers being penalized, because those juries, those judges feel like, something they did could have brought this on. I mean, when you look at Alden Sterling, you look at
Right.
it's on video. It's on video. You can
And he
see
must
it,
have
and they
did
still find a
something.
way to say, you know what? He's not guilty of murder. Now, you just choked the man to death. You just stunned the man to death, gave him a heart attack. No weapon.
The worst was
You
Philando Castile.
got a man being choked to death for a loose cigarette. This
And
continues to
Philando
happen.
Castile, like you said, who was in that car, and she
Did
had the
everything
wherewithal to show that, to put him on video. I mean, everybody should be scared. And they said people are shooting at the cops. People are scared.
Yeah, and he did everything right. He announced that he had a weapon, announced that he had the license to carry the weapon, and you still shoot the man with a child in the back seat and a woman next to him.
And he got
And
off.
he was not even the person driving.
Right.
And
He was a passenger.
that's the thing, and I think you hit it very well. I think it's an amazing point, because you can't control people in their perspectives or their actions, or if you're fearful, police officers or white American in general fearful of black men for their own ill socialized perspectives. you can't do anything about that. But where is the justice? The same way I said the justice for that lady. Where is the justice? Where's the due process from a perspective for those people? Okay, fine, you got a crazy cop, but he needs to be held accountable. But we can't be held accountable. They're not being held accountable because of what you said. Because when people get in those juries, they look at them, they look at the day. They must have did something.
The other
The
resident.
other must have did something. You know how black people are. You know that they're this. You know, so you've already come in with a perspective that I'm guilty because of my color, and you got nerve to tell me I can't say Black Lives Matter, because it does. It needs to matter, because I'm hollering it to the rooftop because y'all apparently ain't saying it. I said this in a panel I was on the other day, and this lady, ooh, she, because I had on these earrings and it said being a black girl is lit. And so she says, don't you think that that's a little bit racist? You know, you're putting yourself above. I said, because I got to. I'm already 2 steps behind. We have to say Black Lives Matter.
Perceived as
Perceived 2 steps behind. So it's a thing of I'm vocalizing, we're marching, Black Lives Matter, because nobody else is saying it or hearing it. We have to say it for ourselves.
And I'm not saying the white lives don't matter.
I'm not
It's
either.
just to say we matter.
We
and
matter
if you
as
look at
well.
the narrative, you look at the narrative of the shooter down in Florida at the school, misguided youth. He was a misguided youth.
Yeah,
And
he had
Brandon
mental
Roof,
issues.
He had
Brandon Roof,
problems.
like we were talking about the other week,
He had
he
been
was
through
taken.
stress.
They took him to Burger King.
Yeah, he's been through stress. And you just murdered 9 people.
Yes.
We're not so fearful of you that we even have to put you in handcuffs. We don't have to do it. Let's go to lunch.
Yeah.
Let's go to lunch. Let's go on a date.
Right.
You know, and you know that and then
the way it came
you have this
along.
young man in his grandmother's backyard, and I can't say that he was doing everything right. He might have busted out some windows or what have you, but he didn't kill anybody.
Right.
So you have somebody that murders multiple people, and you're not that fearful of him, but you have another man in his grandmother's backyard who may have busted some windows, holding a cell phone, and you're so fearful that you have to kill this man and take his life. There's something wrong.
And there's a legal standard that you cannot use lethal force to protect property. You can only use lethal force to protect life.
Yeah,
That's
and
it.
As a
And
civilian,
they
I
just
would go to
abandoned
jail.
that.
I would go to jail for shooting a man in the back, whether he had stole something out of my house or not. If he was leaving and I shot him in the back, I'm going to jail.
If you were white, maybe not.
No,
I
no,
mean,
I'm going to jail.
Or if you say, "Hey, guy, turn around," you tell him to
with
turn
Trayvon
around.
Martin, I don't know.
Now, if he doesn't have a weapon, I'm definitely going to jail because there's no fear of life. There's no fear of
Right.
endangerment of my life.
Yes.
So why don't the same rules apply to, the people that we have?
And
Here's
when
the
you-
thing, they do. Like, they're not, police officers aren't taught to shoot first. Like, that's not the perspective. That's not how police academy goes. That's not how you're taught. These people are just they're just actively shooting people. And because I might misquote it, but in the Bible it says, because a sentence against a man isn't brought quickly, that it's in the hearts of men to continue to sin. Because nobody is out here, none of these police officers are being charged. There's no repercussions.
Right.
There hasn't been any type of.
No, that man got charged for killing that white lady.
I'm talking about
He went
against
to
black.
jail.
I'm talking about
Yeah,
against
so
black people.
A black
Yeah.
cop shot a white woman, I think in Seattle.
Yeah, and the cop lost his job when
lost-
he handcuffed that and took that white nurse to jail for.
But in the reverse,
But
They didn't
not
kill
for
him.
us.
not for us. They're going to continue to do it. They're going to continue to
But
do it.
there's so much hatred going around. Remember in Oakwood Hospital the other day, the girl with the hip
Yeah,
jab
the
was
guy came
standing,
up and
and
hit
the guy just came out and punched her. I mean, it's like
He
it's
had a mental problem though.
Yeah, but it's like it's okay to be overtly to express your hatred overtly.
When the
It's
president
okay.
is the president.
Yes.
It started from there. No sooner than Trump was elected, you started talking about going to schools. There were schools.
Yes.
There was that kids that had never been terrorized before. One of my coworkers, children, they are homeschooling their children right now because of racial slurs that have been put against them since no sooner than Trump was in. It was like, oh, okay, we got a free car, because that's how you look at leadership. If your
top
leadership is racist, well, then I got the right to be racist as well.
It's like, you know how they took a breath of fresh air. Oh, now we could be ourselves.
Yes.
You know, that's the way it seemed to me, you know. And he has tried to take away, as I said, everything Barack Obama has done for the betterment. I mean, the ecology, you know, all of that.
Yeah, let's pollute the earth.
Pollute the earth.
Obama
Absolutely. And it's
wanted
all,
make money.
but
Let's
do
kill
you
it.
notice, and you just said
To
it,
make
Daryl,
money.
it's all about the money. Well, hopefully, it's going to be all about the money with Mueller when he gets him, because they have to get him.
taking too long.
I am so tired of.
taking too
I,
long.
every day I watch the news. I cannot watch. I'm not going to watch the news for a week because I can't take it.
You know, there's one thing you have to know about the federal government. They're never in a hurry because I have all the facts. I'm just building the case.
Okay,
And you're
that's-
watching Trump squirm every day. And all he's doing is tightening up the noose himself. So everything he says, Mueller just says, okay, and he'll make that little note, because when he has to sit down and talk to him about all these lies he's told, he tells one lie to the special prosecutor.
What
Game.
about
I would
yesterday?
agree with
It's
that.
game.
When the feds come, they take
take
a
their
they take a
time.
minute, but they coming with 30 charges. You not getting
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
They coming with 30 charges, and one of them is gonna stick.
Right.
They ready.
They are ready. But you know, the thing is, yesterday when they were asking Trump all those questions, and he said he didn't know anything, but his lawyer, they're getting ready to get on top of his lawyer
Oh, yeah.
for $130,000 that you so-called did in behalf of the campaign, or however you did it. You cannot even make a donation
of that
of that
size.
Right.
Mhm.
You can't do it.
And you cannot enter into a contract for a client without the client being aware of the contract. So,
Absolutely.
and, you know, for him to say, I know nothing about it, but he's saying, you know, I did this on behalf of,
Right,
you know, my
right,
client.
right.
Okay, somebody is lying.
Fall guy.
Daron,
He's gonna be-
Daron,
he's
I saw
he's
you
gonna be
go,
the fall
oh,
guy.
gosh.
He's gonna fall on the sword for him.
I would.
I'm even more scared just for the simple. If Trump gets impeached, they have the deck stacked. So you got Penske. Is it Penske? What
Pence.
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 I don't
Oh,
want
God.
him.
Oh, yeah.
You got Paul Ryan. I don't want him. So
Here's my
even if we win, we lose. It's
That's true. I totally agree. I had a conversation where I was saying, and they were like, well, Pence is going to be up, and he might, from a politician perspective, may be worse. I was like, I agree. I think the next 3 years, feel like it's been 5 already. The next 3 years are going to be tumultuous. But here's my thing with Pence. At least he has some level of diplomacy. Like, maybe we won't go to war with Korea. Maybe we won't. Like, at this point, it's, you know, economy and all of these things are about to affect us heavily.
He's a radical,
However,
he's a radical Christian terrorist.
Yeah.
I mean, you seriously, you think that's better?
I don't
To have
think
a
it's
radical
better.
Christian terrorist?
I think it's better than somebody that's
Trump-
crazy.
He might have
Trump
a better
is
chance
pure
of getting
evil.
stuff done.
Trump is pure evil.
Trump is dumb.
Yeah,
Like,
that too.
that's the thing. Like,
But a dumb
because
evil man, look
it's-
what's happening.
It's worse.
You know, I really think that, you know, they keep talking about us being in a constitutional crisis, and there are too many people involved in this whole, you know, plan to take over the government. And Pence can't, you know, he can't just say, well, I didn't know. No, you knew, because you were sitting with a bunch of Russians too, my friend. So all of these people, the crisis is that we have an illegal presidency right now, okay? And that's the part that they're slow walking this, because if that in fact happens, we've never been in a situation where we have no president of the United States. And we're about to face that, because
It's
all
not
of
gonna
these
happen.
people are part of this whole
Well,
Somebody's
let
gonna
me,
be
ask
president.
this: if he is unseated, do they undo all of the stuff that he's put in place? because that's my word. When I say
Yeah.
I wish they hurry
Yeah.
up, it just gives him more and more time to do things
To do more
put us in
damage.
a worse position. So when he's unseated, do they go back and say, "Hey, none of this really counted," and undo this law, that law, this law, and that law?
Overtime.
Oh, it's time. I'm sorry, everybody, to get involved. Join us again for Table Talk. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to my audience here, and thank you all so much.
Thank
for
you.
having us.
See you next time.